All right, welcome everyone to our webinar today. Super excited to be here with two amazing panelists. Feel free to scan this QR code here to get slides, and in a few slides from now, I'm going to show the same QR code again. If this doesn't work for any reason, this QR code is an email to our head of marketing and partnerships, Eric Sanjurma. It's Eric at Simplesat.io. Eric, just put your email in the chat too if anyone can't use this, but this is how you can get the slides if you email him. So I'm your host. I'm Cory Brown. I'm the CEO at Simplesat, based in Bangkok, but from Seattle originally. And we have two amazing panelists here. First off, from the greatest city in the universe, Elliot Fox from Bangkok. Sorry, Celine, that was a joke for the New Yorkers. Okay,
you got me on that one.
Yeah. All right, from New York, Celine Doumar, CSM at Vitally. What's up, Celine? Thank you for being here.
Hi.
And Elliot Fox, also in Bangkok, but from US originally, is head of CS at Simplesat. So thank you both for joining, and we're going to share a bunch of amazing stuff today. We're going to go over strategies to ensure seamless transition from implementation to customer success, best practices to promote active usage and engagement, how to transition from a tactical approach to a strategic approach, how to leverage CSM to expertise to drive value, and tips. And of course, at the end, we're going to do a Q&A, and I think I'll introduce that in a moment. So that's just what I said. All right, so before we get started, not everyone here is familiar with Simplesat and or Vitally, so we'll just do a quick introduction of both of these tools, and then we'll get started with questions for our panelists. So first up, Simplesat is a customer feedback management tool, which is, we make it super easy and fun for businesses to collect and measure customer satisfaction from their customers. And we have all the top metrics, CES, NPS, 5-star NPS, additional question surveys. Basically, our focus is helping our customers ask the right question at the right place at the right time, and to get actionable feedback on that, actionable feedback, so that they can use that to improve their business and customer service and all that sort of thing. And Celine, how about you tell us a little bit about Vitally?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you that are not familiar with Vitally, Vitally is a leading customer success platform for B2B SaaS organizations all over the world. And with Vitally, CS teams can consolidate their tech stack and have real-time data all in one tab. And you can integrate the customer experience directly with project management tools and project management tools and communication tools. And then you also have the ability to build actionable reports and contextualize all of those insights. And it's all backed by powerful automation.
Anything you want to say here?
Yeah, so we are a Series B backed by some really powerful VCs. So really excited about that, but we're really here to help fight churn, increase retention, and help our customers be strategic partners to their customers.
Awesome. Thank you, Celine. All right, so right before we start, just a few more things. This webinar will be recorded. It is recording now, which is nice. Last time I did this, I forgot to record halfway through, so that's all good. And please make sure to use the Q&A feature. Queue up your questions, because that's, I think, maybe the most value that we can get from this webinar. We have some questions planned, but it'd be great to answer live questions from the audience. So keep those queued up. Keep those coming. And again, here's how you can get the slides. This is a QR code to send Eric an email, Eric at simplesat.io, to get these slides. And this is for everyone watching now, but also anyone who's going to be watching the recording later on. Okay, let's get this going. So first topic here is transitioning from implementation to customer success. We have some questions lined up. So first question is, what are some common challenges that customers face after the initial implementation, and how to address these challenges to ensure a smooth transition to customer success? And Celine, can you start us off?
Yeah, I'll start us off here. So I think there's two main things, aside from, of course, the change management piece, which I think is a really, really important part of implementation, making sure the team is trained, making sure the team is prepared and they understand why we're implementing this new software. Some of the challenges are, one, how do we track adoption by our teams? We've got this great new software set up. How do we make sure that the team is actually not only logging into the software, but leveraging everything that we've set up? And so I think kind of to address that, there's a couple of things. One, let's make sure we have all of the right reporting and the right metrics to look at how the team is actually leveraging the software. And then two, and I think this piece is really, really important, making sure that as a management team, we're actually reinforcing the behavior by leveraging the software yourself. So I'll use an example in Vitally, for example. You might set up a renewal workflow and you have a renewal project and you want your CSMs to check off those tasks within the project. So during your weekly renewal call with the team, you pull up a dashboard that has upcoming renewals with those projects, and you're reviewing the progress of those projects. So leveraging what is set up in the software on a regular basis with the team, and make sure you're constantly kind of like reinforcing the behavior of using it is a really key strategy to make sure that the team is adopting the platform. And I think a big part of that as well is liking the platform. That's one big thing. And then I think the other piece is post-implementation, you get your MVP set up, your minimum viable product, right? And then the question is, what is next? So I think a lot of customers come in, they get everything set up, and then everything, their team is leveraging the software, and then they're not sure where to go next. Some softwares have a lot of blank canvas, and it kind of leads to that analysis paralysis. What should we be focused on? What do other customers in our segment focus on? Do we refine our process? Do we build a new process? How do we know what we've built is working? So it's really a matter of kind of like addressing all of those with your customers on a regular basis to make sure that we're really guiding them, providing best practices, providing templates, providing blueprints, making sure that they have the resources to know where they should be focused next. And I think part of that is also, of course, if we're getting really granular, understanding their goals and making sure that best practices and suggestions that we're providing in terms of what they should focus on actually align with what they're ultimately trying to achieve.
Excellent. Can you elaborate on any of these strategies that you do to ensure a seamless handover and transition?
Yeah. So there, I think there's a couple of things here. One is like setting expectations from the beginning. That's really key, I think, across the board. Making sure that the customer right off the bat understands what your role is, who the implementation team is, how long they'll be working with implementation, and then what the relationship is going to look like post-implementation as well. So making sure that the customer is super comfortable with your entire process and comfortable throughout their entire life cycle. I think that just is super helpful. And then making sure that the CS team is involved from the very beginning, right? So obviously the implementation team is going to be that like tactical day-to-day point of contact, but the CSM should be involved from the very beginning, especially on the kickoff call, to make sure that from a context perspective, we know everything going into the account, why they signed on, and then how we can strategize with them post-implementation on how to make sure they're actually optimizing the platform. And at Vitally, we have note templates, for example, for all of our implementation calls. So as a CSM, if I can't join a call, I can review that note. It's a very clear chronological order. There is consistent information in every single note. So that allows me to make sure that I'm caught up throughout the process. And then we also have a handover template. So that outlines things like, okay, what did we miss during implementation? Is there something that the customer wanted to table for later on? And making sure all of that information is outlined. So from the customer's perspective, everything is really seamless. I have the entire story as the CSM because I've been involved from the beginning, and throughout implementation, things have been documented in an organized and consistent fashion, so that, again, the customer lifecycle experience is really simple on their side.
Okay. Did you want me to show you, is this relevant to what you're talking about here? Is this to help
Yeah.
you? Yeah.
Yeah, so this is an example of Vitale's onboarding plan, and this is something that we review with our customers at the very beginning of our implementation process. Of course, we iterate upon it, but this really allows us to provide our customers with their overall kind of overview of what we're going to be doing over the next couple of months, and then how we're going to be working together over the next year or so. And this is where we're also kind of aligning on like what their goals are, what is their strategy. And this is a conversation that includes the CSM, the solutions architect, and the customer to kind of set up the relationship on the right path.
Okay, great. And then, so why is this important? Like, why do this at all? And why is this important for long-term success?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Having this sort of like strategy, understanding, ultimately, we're trying to understand the customer's goals, right? Like they signed on for a very specific reason. Of course, everyone signs on high level, generally the same thing. Like the platform has value props that you can always tie things back to, but making sure you understand the customer organization, the organization that's going to be using this and how they want to be using this to ultimately like achieve whatever OKRs they have or whatever KPIs they have, making sure that you understand that context so that when we're building things that are actually going to align to those goals. So having this like set up, having the customer feel comfortable with our knowledge on them is really, really important, and allowing them to like reference back to this throughout the entire onboarding, I think is just super helpful in making sure the customer is comfortable, making sure you are comfortable, and you're actually suggesting and recommending them ways to set up the platform and in a way that's going to tie back to their department goals.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next question here for Elliot. When and how do I incorporate CSAT into my workflow with my business?
Yeah, so you should incorporate CSAT and other survey contents throughout the customer lifecycle, kind of at every touch point that you could survey on in a way. So you want to, collect as much feedback from your customers as you can. And I think, basic implementation is with support processes or support tickets at the end of kind of that transactional event. You can obtain highly relevant feedback as to how that support process went, and then you can leverage that feedback and deliver it to your CSMs. So if there are any kind of support events going alongside implementation, you can kind of keep track of that more granular feedback. And it's not just support related. You could do post meeting feedback. And that's, more so you're going to get most of your insights from the actual meeting and talking with your clients, but it's more so if they don't, have the interest level, or if they didn't feel comfortable sharing it during the call, you're providing them that, other format it's following up afterwards, and they can give honest feedback that's maybe not, directly face-to-face. Other situations outside of the implementation process, it could be like post-trial feedback if you offer a free trial, or it could be kind of like help center article CSAT surveys, just to see, are they engaging with your resources on your website, or how valuable do they find that content, or if you're providing them with kind of blueprints or an onboarding plan, are they seeing value there? Like how are they reacting to that content? If they want to give feedback around it.
So it seems like you could do it anywhere. It's kind of what you're saying, right? And just experiment and different touch points. Yeah.
I think it's different for every company, the optimal kind of strategy. It depends on your client base and how they like to communicate. So some experimentation is required, and you don't want to over survey your clients. That's not what I'm suggesting here. But you should establish all the touch points that you think it could be valuable to have client insight and feedback on. And then you could separate your client base into different cohorts, and you could survey them at different touch points. So you're not surveying everybody at every touch point, but different people have different touch points that you survey, and you can get insights into those processes for your company.
All right, that makes sense. Anyone in the chat, please share if you're doing anything creative or interesting with surveys and CSAT or any type of different survey. I think everyone would love to see that. But thank you both. Moving on. Ready? Hope
Ready.
so. All right, next topic. We're going to talk about driving platform adoption. So first question, when it comes to driving platform adoption, what are the key metrics that your company focuses on, and how do you measure and track them? Celine, you want to start out?
Yeah, I can start off. So we focus on a few key metrics. Specifically, when it comes to platform adoption, we look at overall activity object usage. So in Vitally, we have a couple of core features. Those come with every contract. Everyone has access to them. So we track the usage of those core features across our user base to make sure that our customers are actually adopting some of the features that we have available to them. And one thing I'll note on this is we are not a one size fits all. Not everyone needs every core feature. So we track them together to look at it holistically to see like, okay, overall, maybe they don't need this specific feature, but maybe they're using this. So overall, their core feature usage is looking pretty good. So that's one thing we track. We just want to make sure they're kind of leveraging our basics and using the features that we have. And then the other thing that we look at is like weekly active usage and monthly active usage. And we look at this specifically for CSMs. Obviously, our platform is geared towards CSMs. We want to make sure that the CSMs are logging in on a very regular basis and for as a baseline. So we track that as well. And for both of those things, we look at kind of trend over time. We want to make sure that like if it is increasing, obviously that means we're on the right track. Maybe they have really high usage, but it has been steadily decreasing. Like that is probably a bad sign. It probably means there needs to be some sort of intervention. So tracking the trend over time for those sort of specific product metrics as well is really important for us and kind of tells us how the customer is doing.
And so how is Vitally tracking this? Are you using software or built in your system or some third-party tool?
Yeah, so we drink our own champagne at Vitally. So we are using Vitally to track this, and we use what we call success metrics. And these are custom metrics that are customized. Obviously, everyone has kind of their own different metrics that they want to track. So we leverage our success metrics and we track them in our own platform. And then from these metrics, we're able to obviously create specific reports and create specific automations that might trigger a task or just trigger a notification, kind of depending on, hey, this is trending really well, or this is trending really low, and so on. So we leverage our success metrics to make sure we're tracking this.
Great. Elliot, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, really similar answer for us. I think Celine covered, most of it. The useful kind of adoption metrics for us that we focus on are, of course, customer feedback and survey related. So have they set up a survey? Have they configured it? Have they looked around the platform at all? That would really be the first step. And then are they collecting feedback? And those are kind of more important than active usage for us. A lot of our clients don't directly engage the platform, but maybe it's more about those integrations and what we're doing with other platforms and showing feedback from there. So yeah, feedback changing over time and how they're using the platform, and then kind of other adoption metrics of like kind of other features, which maybe like Celine was saying, it's not the core feature set that maybe everybody needs, but yeah, is important to a subset of customers.
And what does Simplesat use to track these metrics at the moment?
Yes, we have some analytics tracking tools through Intercom, I guess would be our main one. It's the support widget that we use on our website. So they help with tracking some of that data.
All right, great. Next question. Can you share best practices or initiatives your company has implemented to promote active usage and engagement among customers? How about Elliot, you start us out here.
Yeah, so I think the kind of fundamentals are the best practices to promote active usage and engagement, especially for our business. We have a lot of clients that prefer like a self-serve approach. Like it's almost, like half and half in a way. So I think the user experience is really, really important, like not having, a complicated experience or confusing experience, because that can really decrease adoption, and they're not really going to give you a chance to recover, right? They're just gonna go get confused if it's confusing, and they're not going to come back or respond to your outreach or be responsive to your communications. And along with that, like a help center, of course, fundamental to have documentation and tools set up and to have that at relevant points within the product. But in terms of like kind of other things that we're doing, recently we've had a big initiative around proactive outreach and being more proactive about reaching out to clients and helping them with maybe points of friction that we think may have come up during their onboarding experience, or things that we've noticed based on their usage, or just to offer like client meetings to address their kind of use case or implementation projects to ensure they're kind of hitting their implementation goals.
All right, thank you. So additionally, kind of follow-up question here for either Celine or Elliot. So what strategies have you found effective in overcoming roadblocks to adoption?
Yeah, I think at least for us, obviously, like we have a lot of automation set up, so we can really flag these things kind of like before they become a larger problem. But one, we want to make sure that we are really up to speed with our customers and our main points of contacts to understand how things are going. And if there is, low adoption, address it immediately and just work with the customer to understand like why there is low adoption. Do people not like the product? Is it an education issue? Is it change management issue? Whatever it might be. So just working closely with the customer to make sure that you understand why there is potentially low adoption. And then from there, you can strategize and figure out what is the best way to move forward. Do we need to have like regular training sessions, office hours? Is it just like more templates? Like what is going to help solve that low adoption, and go from there.
Okay, great. This next question, this is a really big one. How do you ensure that customers are getting maximum value from your platform? It's kind of like the holy grail. I'm like a product manager myself, so like this is what I'm always thinking about. So how do you do this, Celine?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think the first thing here is value means something different to every customer, right? So this kind of goes back to like how you initially establish the relationship. Like, what are they actually trying to achieve? What does success mean to them? Once you have defined what value means with the customer, then you can sort of work with that and make sure that whatever we do moving forward aligns back to whatever their goals are. So I think that, and I'll use like Vitally as an example, we have monthly value reviews, for example. So based on whatever they're trying to achieve, whatever their goals are that we have documented and that we share with them and we make sure we're tracking with them, we provide best practices and recommendations on how they can maybe leverage an additional feature or optimize a specific feature that they are already using. So we use those kind of monthly reviews to make sure we're constantly like revisiting what we established as their goal, and then providing them ways to like continue to optimize and build out the platform so that they are just constantly improving. And one more thing on that, we also we straight up ask our customers, like, if you were going to renew today, would you renew? And I think that also is very telling. If they're not going to renew, they're not finding value, and we need to like basically redirect the relationship.
Okay, there's a few good questions in the chat right here. Mary Ann, what happens if the customer only has vague goals, and like how do you shape that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And that happens a lot. Some customers, they don't know what their goals are. They have we have this platform, we think this is what we want to do with it, but we don't have like a number. And I think that's okay. I think there are ways to work with them to try to get a little bit more granular on what their high level goal actually means. So it does potentially require some discussion with them. and sometimes maybe they just need your guidance, like to kind of work through, okay, at a high level, if you want to increase like NRR, what are the current gaps right now? What is your team having trouble with? What are they struggling with? And kind of go from there to then figure out like, what are the things that we could potentially work on that would allow them to have higher retention that would ultimately lead to higher NRR. So really trying to get a little bit more granular with the customer. And I think even if that's difficult, it's still totally valid to provide like best practices and recommendations, or just do like an audit of the platform and be like, you're not really using this.
Mhm.
This is how other people use it. Maybe this could work for you as well.
Okay, so you kind of attack it from both ends, like try to ask them about what do you really want, and also say, you know, here's what our other clients are doing, and here's what you could get. And okay. Okay, great. We're going to move on. I'll try to get these questions in the chat at the end, Q&A, if we have time. Otherwise, if you can just throw those in the Q&A too, but I'll do my best. I got like 30 windows open here. All right, next topic, empowering CSMs as strategic partners. So first question in this topic, how does your company empower CSMs to transition from a tactical approach to a more strategic focus?
Yeah, I can start us off here.
Sure.
I think this kind of goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, but just like defining what the role of a CSM is and making sure that that is like very clear. There's a very clear delineation between implementation. When implementation is over, that's when you switch over to more of that CS strategic focus. And I think the ways to make sure that the CSMs, and I think this is like very common across every company, how do we make sure our CSMs are strategic, right? And they're not like reactive, they're proactive. We need to make sure they have like the right resources so that their customers aren't actually coming to them with those tactical how-to questions. And the way we do that is having great documentation that customers can leverage, having an amazing support team that customers trust and know they can get answers from. So I think just empowering CSMs with the resources that can manage that like tactical day-to-day gives CSMs the time to focus on that more strategic work.
And so at Vitally, when do CSMs come into the picture?
Yeah, so we are involved from the beginning. So we do meet the customer at the very beginning of the partnership. Our solutions architects then work with them to set up like their integrations and get their MVP set up. And once that is complete, then we sort of take over as that main point of contact. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what benefits does this shift bring to the company, but both the company and its customers of really focusing on empowering CSMs and all this?
Yeah, I think benefits obviously for the company are just ultimately the customer experience. Like they are generally getting a better customer experience. They are getting better value out of the platform because the CSMs are able to focus on like optimization rather than tactical how-to questions. And so when customers are really able to, or when your CSMs are able to focus on that with your customers, you're really able to like elevate their experience, and they really are getting the value that they want out of the platform. And they know that they're getting the value out of the platform because they're having those conversations with your CSMs. So I think ultimately like that's just going to lead to higher retention, like higher customer satisfaction, and just a really high level of trust.
Okay. Got it. Do you have, I'm really curious on this whole CSM. Do you have like, what are the metrics that you use for CSMs at Vitally? Like, they're like KPIs or something to know if you guys are being successful?
We look at, we have like a couple of OKRs as a department, obviously, but ultimately like we are looking at NRR at a very high level. And then we're looking at like initiatives that we have every quarter that help us achieve that. But NRR is like basically our end all be all. And some of the initiatives that we look at are like, okay, let's make sure all of our customers have a goal. if our customers don't have a goal, it means we're not having strategic conversations with them.
Right.
So high level, we have NRR, and then kind of on more granular level, we have like different initiatives every quarter to make sure that we're kind of like leading towards that.
Okay. Fran in the chat has a really good question. Where do account managers sit in this? So currently in my organization, the AMs are introduced as soon as customers move from implementation into BAU. I, as a CSM, don't get introduced until the customer is at risk. However, I want to move into a more proactive position because I don't want to step on the AM's shoes.
Yes. So account managers, and we recently like spun up our account manager sort of branch at Vitally back in November. So it's fairly new motion for us, but account managers at Vitally manage the renewals and are involved with the partnership overall, but the CSM is really the owner of the relationship, and the account managers are there to be more of a commercial partner to the customer. So CSMs really own the relationship at Vitally, and then we pull in account managers come renewal time, or if we want to run like a QBR or something along those lines.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Okay, next question. How do you use customer feedback to shape your customer success strategies? And how do you avoid overcorrecting or shifting CS strategies based on that feedback? Elliot, how about you take this one?
Yeah, thank you. So you can use customer feedback to shape customer success. I like to think of whenever we get feedback at Simplesat, we always first use that as an opportunity to connect with our clients and to really make sure that we understand what the feedback is related to. You know, is there a friction point with the product usage that they're commenting on? And just clarifying on the comment that they had left, make sure we have all of the kind of background information and fully understand the use case that the client is trying to do. And whatever that feedback is, if it's negative or positive, it's just a really good conversation point. So it could be something you hop on a meeting to discuss, and then it evolves into an implementation goal or a project that you develop either with a current client or an onboarding client. To make sure that they, hit their goals and can derive value. But in terms of avoiding overcorrecting, I think, it's important for your business strategy to have some resilience. You've made this strategy, and you shouldn't be changing it from just a single customer feedback that you receive. But you should look at that, and have that conversation and try to get the real insights with your customers. If you're getting multiple feedback, if it's statistically significant within your client base, then it's a time to look at, what's the root cause here. And usually if there's smoke, there's a fire. So if you're getting a lot of feedback around a common theme, it might be a time to take a step back and take a look at your operations and what you could be doing to improve on that point. Yeah.
Okay. Celine, anything to add on that?
No, I think from like a product feedback perspective, kind of same general idea. We look at it from like a statistic sort of data-driven perspective to make sure that with the feedback that we're taking, we're updating our strategy if it is very significant, and handling it sort of like one-off if it is maybe only impacting one customer or an outlier there.
Okay, thank you. There's a good question from Jessica. This is, I think, from the first question we were talking about on this topic. Can you give an example of a quarterly initiative that you brought up, quarterly initiatives? Like, what's an example of something like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And a lot of these tend to end up going longer than a quarter, but I'll just use like our goal capture as an example. That is like something that we started focusing on last quarter, and that is still an initiative this quarter. I expect it will probably like continue to be one, but essentially like we want to make sure that for all of our customers, we always have a tracked goal that is open with a due date. and the purpose of that is really to make sure like we know what our customer goals are. And we can look back and say, hey, customer, look at all the goals that we helped you achieve.
Mhm.
So that's
So
one
like at
example.
Vitally, like what's like a real example? I'm curious of like a quarterly initiative that a customer of yours might have.
Oh, a quarterly initiative of a customer.
Mm-hmm.
So one would be maybe like on-time renewals. Like one of my customers, they don't really have on-time renewals. They're really behind on that. So like this quarter, they want to make sure they have like 100% on-time renewals.
Mm-hmm.
That is kind of like their quarterly initiative.
Okay, got it. All right, let's see. And anyone else in the chat, like, please keep the questions coming. Q&A is I don't know. I got everything open here. Just keep it coming. All right, so those are our questions. And on our last topic, Celine, Elliot, is there anything to add on this, or you want to move to Q&A?
I say move to Q&A.
Let's do it.
Do it.
All right, everyone here, please overload us with questions. We're going to drop some knowledge here. Okay, Matt Jensen, where do you find it most effective to deliver the CSAT survey? So is it after an email or in line with the app, or what do you do, Elliot?
Yeah, so in my opinion, this is also, it's very contingent upon, what your operations look like and how your customers engage with your company. With the software product, in-app, I think is king. That's like the best channel that you can do. They're already maybe engaged using your application or platform, and you can offer a survey in a pop-up format, or you can directly tie it to some specific event or action they took in within your app.
Mm-hmm.
Like an example of that could be like data integrations. If they're activating particularly complex data integration that we know that there's some friction that people have trouble setting up, we could set a delay on the page once they've been on that page for like 5 minutes, then show the survey and ask about how they're finding the setup to go with that particular integration. But in terms of like what channel is the most effective, really what we've found is that the best way to get a high response rate for your surveys is to have it tied tightly with the customer interaction. So something the customer cares about, they put in some effort or communication into, they're more likely to provide feedback around that event than an ad hoc survey that's maybe not related to anything. Like relationship surveys just typically have a lower response rate
Mm-hmm.
than transactional surveys.
Right. Like, so Simplesat, Simplesat's basically an add-on to help desks or CRMs to get customer feedback. So like just Zendesk as an example, in Zendesk's native tool, I think out of the box, they have an automation that sends the CSAT survey like the next day. But what we found is that you should just send the CSAT survey as part of the same email that notifies the customer about that the ticket is solved or closed. So you basically say, we completed the request, we think it's solved, blah, blah, blah. By the way, please rate us. And that way you don't send them any additional emails. It's fresh, in their mind. Of course, I mean, it's a great way to get negative feedback if you're solving tickets too early. We've noticed that at once. So like I guess that would be my recommendation. If you're talking about CSAT and specifically ticket CSAT, is really including it with the solved notification email. But anything to add there, Celine?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is, and this is not Vitally specific, but at a previous company I worked at, I was on the implementation team, and you really want to get as much feedback on that as possible. Mm-hmm. So we would tell the customers, hey, you're going to receive a survey, so that they were aware that it was coming, and that also would help like increase the response rate. Mm-hmm. Making sure it's tied very quickly after that sort of like implementation close call is completed, just helps with like increasing that response rate to get more data.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. From Steve, on average, how many clients does each CSM have in their book of business? Also, who within your organization handles the daily fire drills and needs about software product?
Yeah, I think that, so that for us, it depends. And I'm sure this is different at every company, but for the most part, like we have our customers segmented out by the type of customer they are. So we have SMB customers, we have mid-market customers, we have strategic customers. And so depending on which segment the CSM manages, they may have 80 customers if they're on SMB or 20 customers if they're working on strategic. And for the most part, daily fire drills, needs about software or product. Like I said, like if it is really a huge fire drill that is like, you know, customer will churn, like that is something the CSM would manage. But those kind of like day-to-day needs of software or product, we have a really amazing support team who not only helps like answer how-to questions, but obviously they escalate internally when needed, and they really help. They are kind of a strategic partner to our customers as well. They can help come up with like creative solutions to how things might be set up. So it's certainly a mix. I think, you know, in a lot of cases, customers are going to come straight to the CSM. And it is what it is, but we do have a support team as well that helps.
Okay,
handle.
great. This is a really good question from Lily. When a customer activates, what happens to the transition? Is there a playbook saying congrats or any type of handover? I think it's a really good question. Like it's such an important moment, and I think a lot of companies don't really do anything. What are you doing, Celine? Or what does Vitally do?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, our handover happens over a call. I love that idea of saying congrats. I think that would be awesome. We have a handover call with the customer to basically make sure that they're comfortable with implementation officially being completed. Of course, like solutions architects can get pulled back in later to set up things that maybe weren't done initially. But our process mainly just consists of like a call to introduce the CSM and officially close that implementation.
And this is a follow-up question from Lily right here while you're talking. Like, what if, like, for a scaled model, if they don't have calls? Yeah.
And we have a lot of customers like this as well. Like we have customers that have like a fully digital onboarding experience, and they basically just use our automation to configure everything, including like post onboarding. Okay, once they've done X, Y, and Z in the product, that means they're activated. Now we want to send an email to say like, congrats, here are the resources that you need to like continue to be successful. So we do have a lot of customers that use like full automation throughout that onboarding process and action based on what the customer is doing in the product.
So like at a minimum, great automation, sending the right emails at the right time and letting them know when they can schedule a call or reach out to someone if it's urgent or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. Just providing them the resources they need to essentially be successful.
Okay, from an anonymous attendee, kind of mysterious, but Elliot, this one's going to be for you. How do you chase completion of surveys while avoiding being perceived as pushy?
Yeah, good question. I hear this come up a lot, actually. So I think, you know, some different strategies that are kicked around with that are the idea of like if it depends what the touch point is, of course, but if it's with like support ticket-based surveys, for instance, you could have kind of a cool down period, which is something we've added recently, where, you know, essentially you're not over surveying one person if they're submitting tickets every day. So you avoid over surveying them by having a cool down for a particular contact. They shouldn't receive, you know, another survey if they've already answered one within like a month from now or something like that. And then I think, you know, if you're taking advantage of all the touch points within kind of your onboarding and product usage, it's really about splitting up your surveying audience. So you don't survey every contact on every touch point, but you sample your customer audience a bit. You survey certain contacts about certain things, other contacts about other things, and you get kind of a complete picture just from that sampling. So nobody gets surveyed too much.
One thing I would add to that too is that if people aren't answering your surveys, then the problem might not be your follow-up. It might just be, it's a bad question, it's the wrong place, wrong time, wrong question sort of thing. So make sure that it's, I don't know, you're asking, I don't know. Yeah. if it's one of those things. Okay, I hope that answers your question. Okay, what do we got next? We got a lot here. Any suggestions or tips on how to successfully implement new onboarding SMB customers in mass? Anyone want to
Yeah.
chime on that one?
I can chime in on that one. I think the key here is automation is basically, at least with like Vitally, a lot of what I've seen with our customers who have like SMB customers and need to run that onboarding kind of in an automated fashion is just leveraging our playbooks. And basically you have all this data piped in about the customer, you know what they're doing when in the product, and you can essentially like guide them to do the right things, provide them like resources along the way, depending on what they've clicked or what they've enabled, and just make sure they're like doing all of the right things throughout that process. But I think automation is really key to making sure that that is successful when you're trying to do it in en masse.
Okay. Elliot, anything to add? Or next question?
Yeah, I think something we've started doing is more of this type of content, like webinars or outreach sessions, or like group calls. So it could be like group training sessions or group onboarding sessions as well. It could be effective at kind of scaling those traditional onboarding strategies.
Okay, next question. Have either of you come across situations where the key client stakeholders act as blockers or a wall to the key product platform users so that you may suggest things for adoption, but you can't get full visibility on those occurring? Can you see these questions, this panelist?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. This certainly happens. I think the key here, and something that we've tried to start doing, is making sure we don't just have like one or two client stakeholders, is right off the bat trying to establish multiple stakeholders so that if someone is acting as a blocker, we're able to reach out to a different stakeholder to maybe get traction that way. So just having multi-threaded relationships can be super helpful with that. Yeah, that can be tough, but I think multi-threaded relationships are really important. And the other thing that maybe sometimes works, maybe doesn't, but trying to work with that key stakeholder, if there isn't like an option to go around them, to understand like what the challenges are. So you really have to like kind of dive in deep with that specific user to understand why there is sort of that like hesitation to move forward and adopt suggesting.
Okay, Miriam's going to keep pushing.
Okay. Not
Thank
done
you.
yet.
Okay, Dirk, when considering your metrics around activation or adoption of your users, do you ever weigh specific features differently to encourage your teams to steer users towards more valuable features, or have you had success looking at this more broadly at features CSMs would be using?
Yeah, I can jump in on this one as well. Sure. We don't really do this when it comes to like looking at adoption and activation. Like we kind of maintain our core features, and like that's the thing we leverage across the board. And if we add an additional core feature, we'll just include it in that one success metric that I mentioned before. But we will, like if we release a new product, for example, that we think is going to be really valuable, we may have like other internal initiatives that will encourage us to leverage it ourselves with our customers, for example. So we're not looking at it from like an activation adoption specific perspective, but we are trying to encourage usage of it by having like other initiatives to make sure we're showing our customers the value.
Okay, great. Elliot, question for you. Who typically writes survey questions? Is this marketing? Is this CSMs? Who's doing this?
Good question. I know in our company, we all like to get involved and strategize and find kind of the perfect questions for each use case. So, it depends on your company, of course, but typically if the survey touch point is owned by a particular department or team, they should be the ones that have some say in what questions are asked or involved in that, conversation about what questions they think would be effective for getting the insights that you're looking for, and what the goal of the survey is.
Mm-hmm. And actually, in the next month or so, Simplesat, we're going to release AI generated questions. So who writes the questions? OpenAI is
robot
going to be writing them. But Ellie and I were actually having a good conversation earlier this week about how we think that questions should actually try to get lower scores. I know it's Simplesat and Vitally, I'm sure a lot of you guys here, the scores are too high, and oh, great, we got a great CSAT, we got a great NPS, but we know that we're not perfect, and we know we have so much to improve. So it's kind of just, I don't know, maybe a follow-up to this question, that I would try to write questions that are going to solicit, get the customer thinking. I don't know, Elliot, what was a good example that we had about we're like is Simplesat is my favorite company in the world, yes or no, or like something like that, where we're trying to get no's so we can get better follow-up questions or some type of insight, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't want your surveys to be stagnant or to feel stagnant. If you feel like the feedback is always coming in, but you're not, there's not a process of continual improvement, and you're just receiving the feedback at that point, you're not doing anything with it. It's time to look at, changing up the questions and seeing if there's ways that you can get more valuable feedback.
Okay, another great question from Mary Ann here. How does CSMs act strategically as a collective rather than as individual performers? We have high-performing individual players, but they often feel siloed. So are there any methods or processes you guys have to resolve this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think this is something that we're constantly iterating on as well. But I know I mentioned our value reviews earlier, that is an opportunity for every CSM to be strategic. And if they're not sure how, our management team has provided us with essentially examples of things we can think about in ways we can approach those so that we are more strategic with our customers and we are collecting those goals. So it really comes down to the processes and the tasks that I'm responsible for completing as a CSM. It is a strategic task. It's not just send them an email. It's create this value review. Here are ways you can create it. And certainly there's, collaboration and coaching that is done behind the scenes, but from a process perspective, having the value reviews is something that I have to do on a monthly basis is an opportunity for all CSMs to start to pull that strategic lever.
Okay, great. Unfortunately, I think that's our last question. There's so many good questions here. I wish we could stay here forever. Okay. Moving on. So how can we help you next? I'm going to open up a poll here. Launching the poll. You should see this now. So we have 2 questions here. How much did you get out of today's session? This is really important to us because we're doing this to provide value and make it great. So please be honest. Second question, how would you like us to help you after today's webinar? And you can, never mind, there's a few questions here. So you can get a demo and from Simplesat or Vitally. And third question, would you like us to sign you up for the next webinar? And if you say yes, then we'll stick you in our HubSpot system and get you on the next one. So I'll leave this up for a minute or two. How about as we leave this up, we can do another question. Let's see here.
Cool.
Multitasking.
Yeah, it's really stressful. Okay. Typically for us, the buyer is the CEO or the president is part of the buying decision, but after our kickoff, they are gone. So how do you handle dealing with the product champions who are unresponsive or not following through with the goals set with the CEO? Good question, Kurt.
That is a great question. I think this, I think so. Part of this, I think, is initially once that's established, like working off of like something that is documented. So like we have like those value reviews, and that's kind of like also used as a success plan with the customer. So making sure we're like constantly referencing that with the product champion or the point of contact that you're working with, to make sure that like they're constantly thinking about it, and maybe trying to understand like, hey, if you're not following through, like, are there reasons you're not following through? Did your goals change? Like what exactly is going on internally, that is kind of like leading to this unresponsiveness, and like why isn't there buy-in from you? And I think that's maybe a separate thing where the CEO decided to buy, but someone else like was not involved with that decision-making process. So CSMs are almost tasked with like reselling to that particular point of contact, which is a whole nother thing. But I think it's just a matter of trying to like review what is documented. And if that isn't working, like reaching back out to the CEO, not to be a tattletale, but to just say, hey, like just having trouble getting traction on these things. This is what I've recommended, like, and so on. So a couple of different avenues there.
Right.
But
Okay. That's a great point. Okay, great. Thank you. So I think we're good with this poll. If you haven't answered, I'm going to give you 4 seconds. Okay. Thank you, everybody. All right. So thank you all. Thank you for joining. This was amazing. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, our panelists, Celine and Elliot. I don't know about you, but I had a great time. Here's some QR codes just to book demos with Vitally or Simplesat, or of course you can just go to our websites and do the same thing. Thanks again, and see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Cory.